Using VBA in the Shapesheet. In this nugget, I'm not going to teach you any new drawing techniques in Visio. We're actually going to go to the second level, or the dark side, or however you want to run it. Generally speaking, in my experience in IT, you're on one of two sides of the fence, if you're not a manager, that is. You're an actual infrastructure or a classical IT person, maybe a systems administrator, help desk administrator, etc. Or on the other side, you're a developer. In some shops, there's a lot of good interplay on both sides of those fence. In some, especially enlightened organizations, as a matter of fact, there is no fence at all. But what I'm trying to get at here is the next level to mastering Visio 2010 is to move beyond simply using the application as a power user into application development with Visio. I've found in my years of experience as a technical trainer and as an IT professional that as far as the Office suite goes, the Microsoft Office Productivity Suite, there really is a next level. You reach a certain point in your proficiency with these applications, just using the actual interface that Microsoft gives us, where we reach a threshold barrier asking important questions like, well, I see that it's taking me X number of steps to get from point A to point B with this application. There must be a way for me to short circuit that procedure and make it faster or more automated. By contrast, you may reach a level of proficiency with Visio or another member of the Office suite where you just say, well, the application currently doesn't have X functionality. I wonder if I can extend the application to embrace what I need it to do to accomplish this business goal. Now, the answer, the solution to both of those preceding situations is to move over into the development side of things. So what we're going to learn in this nugget is a little bit, this is an entirely separate course unto itself, but I'm going to get you started with Visual Basic for Applications, or VBA automation in Visio 2010. Now, of course, we're going to take the initial step with our definitions and why we might be interested in looking at VBA automation and using the Shapesheet. The Shapesheet is one of those behind the curtain features that many Visio users never ever see. They don't have a need to see it. They don't have a desire to see it. End of story. Some other power users may have just clicked around in the options dialog, enabled developer mode, and stumbled quite literally across the Shapesheet, wondering what it is and how it works. At first blush, we're going to see that the Shapesheet resembles Microsoft Excel, but that is really a first blush situation. The Shapesheet is quite different in how it behaves from Microsoft Excel. Believe me, it is. So by the end of this nugget, I think you'll have a really good appreciation of the two main methods by which we extend Visio to render automation, in other words, shorten our procedures and our workflows, and also to create what are called Visio solutions, where we're using VBA in the Shapesheet to extend the application so that it can do things that it was not able to do out of the box. I think this is some really exciting stuff, and I hope you'll agree. Let's get to work. First, we have VBA, which is formally called Visual Basic for Applications. Now, how can we give a nutshell summary of what VBA is? VBA is the inbox programming environment in the Microsoft Office suite. It's been around for a long time, many years. The version of VBA that comes under the hood in the Office 2010 applications is VBA version 7. Now, VBA derives originally from a full-fledged, compiled, event-driven programming language that Microsoft had called Visual Basic 6.0. I did quite a bit of Windows development using this language back in the day. And by back in the day, I mean the late 1990s and early 2000s. You'd think that it was 20 or 30 years ago by now, right? Event-driven means that the application code consists of functions and routines that wait for the user to do some certain action within the application. That could be clicking a button, ticking a checkbox, etc. When the user initiates that event, that particular function or routine runs. Event-driven programming is an example of a programming paradigm or way of thinking. We've come a long way since purely procedural event-driven languages like VB6. VBA is formally called, if you go to Wikipedia or Microsoft's own site, you'll see that it's called a multi-paradigm programming language because it has elements of the old event-driven procedural stuff, but it also includes some elements of the current standard programming paradigm, which is called Object-Oriented Programming, or OOP. The coolest thing about OOP, as we'll see, we'll get into this very slightly a little bit later in this nugget, is it's maximized for code reuse. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. We can define what's called a class that consists of a whole bunch of actions, basically functions, that are encapsulated within that class. And then wherever we stick that class, whether it's in one application or a dozen applications, just the initiation or instantiation of that class gives us access to all of its encapsulated functions. Really excellent way to do programming. Now, even before VB6, you might remember the BASIC programming language. That actually is originally where Visual Basic comes from. And this was my first programming language back in the early 80s. My first home computer was a Commodore 64, like many of you, I'm sure, who date back that far. And BASIC was, or is, I guess I should say, not a compiled language at all. It's what's called an interpreted language. In other words, your code, as you wrote it, would be parsed directly, line by line, by the BASIC interpreter installed on your personal computer. That's functionally and fundamentally different from how compiled languages like VB6 and VBA7 work. Compiled languages take your code, your human-readable lines, and breaks them down to either an intermediary format or all the way down to machine language, just zeros and ones. Technically, and I'm getting a little bit too geeky here, VBA does break your human-readable code down to an intermediate P code or packed code level, and then that intermediary code is run very quickly by the VBA virtual machine installed on your computer. Anyway, enough about the history. What is so cool about Visual Basic for applications? Well, it's cool because, number one, you don't have to pay for it. If you pay for a license for Visio 2010, you get VBA7 right out of the box. Same with all of your other Office 2010 applications. So it's a fairly powerful programming environment that's unleashed for you right there. Anytime you want to pull the trigger on VBA, you can pop open the built-in Visual Basic for Applications editor, which again has come a long way in subsequent years. It truly could be considered an integrated development environment, or IDE. IDE is a fancy word for an application that not only enables you to create your code, actually write out your code line by line, but also enables you to check it or debug the code, as it's called, run optimization tests, set breakpoints to have your code execute only to a certain point, etc. It's a really sophisticated, standard way to develop software nowadays. So we know that VBA is bundled with Office. I don't think I've gotten around yet, I'm a little long-winded here, I'm sorry, in terms of why it's so cool. Well, it's useful for the automation purpose, primarily. Visual Basic for Applications is the underlying engine that goes into macros. A macro in an Office 2010 context is a pre-recorded series of steps that's saved under some friendly name, such that you can play back that macro with a keyboard shortcut, with a click of the mouse, with a selection from a dialog box. And all of the steps that were picked up by the macro recorder are played back at lightning speed. Now, immediately I hope you can see possibilities here. As you work in Office applications, particularly with Visio 2010, think of all those housekeeping steps that we did that are just repetitive actions. Over the course of this series, I've completed each drawing and then spent several minutes in some cases dressing up the document, centering the shapes on the page, applying a page background, changing the view level, the page orientation, etc. You can roll some or all of those housekeeping tasks into a recorded macro, and then in any other document that has access to that macro, you can invoke all of those steps in one fell swoop. You see? So the idea of automation, or shortening the amount of time it takes and reducing your tedium in building excellent Visio 2010 drawings. Now, what is the link between a macro and VBA? Well, the link is this. Historically, Office has given us two ways to record macros or to write macros. One is to use literally a macro recorder that's built into the application. That's the GUI, the graphical user interface approach, that takes a hand-holding idea. That's that method is optimized for those, obviously, who are not programmers. The other way to go about it is to build your macro entirely out of VBA code. To do that requires that you understand the vocabulary behind the Visio objects. Objects in Visio are things like the document, stencils, shapes, and then within each shape, things like X and Y coordinate positions, pin position, all of that kind of stuff. All of those object names and references need to be referenced by their proper names in order for Visio to understand what you want it to do in a macro. The name of that collection of objects is formally called the Visio 2010 Object Model. And if you're interested in getting into VBA automation with Visio, and for that matter for any Office application, you want to dive into the Microsoft Developer Network or MSDN documentation and study the heck out of the appropriate object model. Of course, for Visio, we want the Visio object model. Specifically, the object model consists of documentation that gives us our class and interface names. Basically, to use just general terminology here, it gives us the vocabulary we need so that we can write understandable VBA code that will actually compile and run. Nothing more needs to be said about this than that. Oh, actually, I guess there is one thing, and that is you can actually combine the GUI macro recorder with the Visual Basic for Applications editor. This is an excellent learning technique. Here's what you do. And I'm going to do this in the upcoming demo. You use the macro recorder to graphically demonstrate to Visio the steps that you want to automate. This could be, again, things like changing formatting, page setup options, etc., or it could be more sophisticated stuff. It's up to you. Once you finish the recording, open the macro in the VBA editor. Visio will let you do that and will show you the VBA code that Microsoft gives you based on your actions. Like I said, this can be a great way for you to learn this vocabulary, this Visio 2010 object model, so that you can start writing your own VBA from scratch. The other aspect of automation and next level solution development with Visio 2010 is a construct known as the shapesheet, one word. The shapesheet is a spreadsheet-like interface that's associated with the major Visio objects. You have a shapesheet associated with every shape and every stencil, any page within your Visio file, and there's actually a shapesheet that corresponds to the document object itself. The shapesheet is akin, I draw a parallel between it and the Windows registry. As an IT professional, you're doubtless familiar with the registry. Generally speaking, you have in Windows a candy-coated front end, as I like to call it, or some graphical user interface that allows you to twiddle knobs and flip switches on how Windows looks, feels, and behaves. A classic example of that is the Windows control panel. You might open the mouse control panel and customize your mouse pointer size and tracking speed. You might open the display control panel and change your screen resolution. You may open the network control panel. Well, you get the idea. The control panel applets are designed to be as user-friendly as possible, and they're also meant to shield you from making a change that can permanently cripple your system. If you're a power user, though, or frankly in some troubleshooting situations, you have no choice but to access the Windows registry directly, which, by way of review, I'll remind you, is a flat file database that stores all of your computer's user and computer settings. In other words, when you make a change in control panel, for example, you're making changes under the hood to the registry. You're just going through the candy-coated front end, kind of a safety glass situation. Similarly, when you're working in Visio, on the drawing page, you're bringing out shapes from a stencil onto the page. You're using the resize control handles and the ribbon tools, etc., and so forth to make changes and to finish your drawing. It's not impossible to get into hopeless trouble using those controls, but it's actually quite difficult, especially with the powerful undo feature in Visio. Likewise to the registry, though, there are some actions that can only be accomplished by going under the hood in Visio. And yes, we can go under the hood in VBA like we just talked about, but we also have this intermediary level called the shapesheet. Now the shapesheet as a spreadsheet, and you're going to see this in detail in our upcoming demo, records everything you wanted to know and more about a particular Visio object. For a shape, for instance, the shape sheet is going to have cells that track the shape's size, its horizontal position, its vertical position, its geometry options, its protection options, its text block options, and then we go into what Microsoft calls the Smart Shape idea. I haven't used this term yet. It's a little bit late in the game for me to introduce it, but basically your shapes in Visio are called Smart Shapes by Microsoft because, as you know now, they can store data in them. They're not just a rectangle or a triangle. It's actually a shape that can be linked to an external data source or store data fields right there in the Visio document. As a matter of fact, you can, in the Smart Shape, create additional data fields that are not going to be user changeable. In other words, you can create data fields to populate metadata for Smart Shapes that users cannot see or access when they open the traditional shape data window for a piece of Visio object. Pretty cool. Other uses for Smart Shape are forcing geometry. A classic problem that we have with these Smart Shapes is something like this. We might bring out an arrow shape, and then when we use a control point to stretch the arrow, we find that the entire shape gets stretched, including the arrowhead. Well, with a couple clicks of the mouse and clicks of the keyboard, you can constrain the proportions on the shape such that when you resize this arrow, the head remains at the same geometrical level, if that makes sense. Another neat thing we can do with the shape sheet is add programmatic actions. This allows us, for instance, to link VBA code that we've created behind the scenes to the shortcut menu of a shape. You'll remember I told you, think of the brainstorming and organizational chart nuggets that we've done in this series, that when you load a template that includes an add-in, that add-in includes normally one or more shortcut menu options such that when you right-click a shape, you can add a new sub-shape or some appropriate shape to that template. All of those programmatic actions exist in the shape sheet. That's where they're defined. The actual code that runs, of course, is stored in a VBA module. So that's why I included both VBA and shape sheet in this same nugget, because they really do fit together hand in glove. Now, enough talking. I'm sure I've more than whet your appetite for seeing how these technologies work in color. So let's fire up Visio 2010 and get some work done. Let's do this thing. Here we are in Visio 2010 Backstage View, and in this demonstration we're going to work with automation, both with Visual Basic for applications, macroing, and the shape sheet. In the new area, I want to let you know that I have in fact downloaded and installed the Visio 2010 Software Development Kit, or SDK. Now when you do that, you wind up with some start menu items that point to sample resources and the documentation, and the SDA also creates some assets within Visio 2010. For instance, you'll see a new template category here called SDK, and in there we have a subfolder called Samples, and these are different programmatic Visio files that tap into the .NET framework, not VBA, but actually the full-fledged .NET framework that we use the Visual Studio IDE for. As a matter of fact, if you try to open one of these templates, we wind up seeing that this template, let me close out of my extra stuff here and zoom in, this template is designed to work with the flowchart sample application that must be built by compiling source code located blah blah blah. You'll also notice if you installed the SDK, on the Developer Ribbon tab we have a new group called SDK Tools with some nifty utilities, one of which we'll take a look at, the Print Shapesheet function. Now, speaking of the Developer tab, if you plan on automating in Visio, and by automating I mean recording macros with the macro recorder, or getting under the hood with VBA, or using the Shapesheet, you're going to want to make sure that the developer mode is enabled in Visio so that we see the developer toolbar. To do that, we go backstage. I know I showed you this elsewhere in the training, but sometimes repetition really helps. We'll come down to Options. In the Options dialog, Advanced area, we'll scroll all the way down to the bottom and make sure Run in Developer Mode is turned on. Now, if Developer Mode is turned off, which it is by default, you wind up not having a Developer tab at all, which makes it a lot tougher to see actions related to macroing, especially, and this is kind of nonsensical in my humble opinion, down here in the status bar by default the macro recorder button is there, and yet there's no obvious user interface for accessing macros. Kind of weird. So let's make sure that we are running the application in developer mode. And I'll turn that on. We'll click OK, and we've got ourselves the developer toolbar. Now, a quick introduction to the developer toolbar. The code section is where we're going to be spending the majority of our time in this nugget, here and the Show Shapesheet button over in Shape Design. Visual Basic launches the Visual Basic editor that's embedded in and associated with our Office 2010 applications. In fact, let me open it right now and resize the window so that you can see it well. Now, you'll notice that the VBA editor still uses old school toolbars and menus. I'm sure eventually Microsoft is going to ribbonize or apply the Fluent user interface, as the Office 2007 and Office 2010 user interface is formally called. They'll apply that here, but they haven't yet gotten around to it. This is, again, Visual Basic for Applications version 7, and it is a full-scale integrated development environment where we can debug, build, set breakpoints, manage add-ins. You can do all of the tricks with your code as you work through the development process in here that you can with Visual Studio, which is, of course, the big brother, elder sibling to Visual Basic for Applications editor. Now, some people are confused on the interrelationship between the editor and the associated Office app. In other words, they're concerned that they might have done some work here in VBA and then they clicked the close button over here. Will that close Visio? No, it won't. It's actually, the VBA editor is a completely separate utility. And you'll notice if we go to the File menu, the final option is Close and Return to Visio. So you actually need Visio running to launch the VBA editor. The Macros control invokes a dialog box, a GUI tool, that enables us to view, debug, delete, or run any macros that are stored either in the active document or stencils. As it happens, you can store VBA code in stencil files. We'll talk more about that momentarily. That provides a really nice way to make your code more portable. That's going to be an issue that you'll run into, doubtless. As you start building out VBA code, you're going to want to share that code among multiple Visio drawings. And because by default your macros in VBA code are embedded within just the single file, you need to develop creative ways to make your code more portable, as I said. We have the Record Macro button, which is what we're going to start with pretty soon. This invokes the macro recorder. If you've recorded macros in other Office applications, it's largely the same thing. We give the macro a name, we provide a shortcut key optionally, we determine where we're going to store the macro, we provide an optional description, and then we click OK. And as we go through steps to record that macro, Visio is recording the Visual Basic for Applications steps in the background. Macro security is worth our checking out. This button takes us into the Trust Center in our Options dialog. The default setting for macros is to disable all macros and give you a notification bar. Now, the Enable All Macros Not Recommended is something you want to be very careful before doing, because this could infect someone's computer if they run a Visio file that, let's say, they received from an untrusted source that contains macro code. So you want to be careful on how you do this. You might digitally sign your macros using a code signing certificate within your organization. And this is nice because your own macros will run unfettered and anybody else's macros will not. I'm going to, because this is a trusted development environment, override and choose Enable All Macros in this case. I'm also going to select the option Trust Access to the VBA Project Object Model, because again, I'm working in a trusted environment. By the way, you might be wondering, as I have in the past, now I know the answer, what does macro actually mean? We know that a macro is a pre-recorded series of steps that we can play back in a flash that's meant for automation, but the term macro, if you're familiar with etymology at all, I believe it comes from the Greek and it means larger scale. You know, you have macroeconomics and microeconomics, that kind of thing. Well, macro actually comes from old school computing with what are called macro commands. Evidently, back in the early days of PC programming and assembly language programming, you would create a macro command that was very much like macros are used today, a single statement that could run several statements in one fell swoop. Think of how cumbersome it was to program back in the day. So it was especially important to do automation. So that's a little history on the term or origin of the term macro. All right, I'm going to stop there, and let's close out of this drawing and come backstage. We're going to build a sample drawing, again, just bringing out random shapes. It doesn't matter what's there. I'm going to select the brainstorming diagram for a specific reason, because this is an example of a Visio template that has some add-in code enabled. We'll bring out the main topic. You remember we've seen this in the past. And if we right-click the main topic, we see some context-sensitive, what are called actions associated with that topic. In this template, you'll remember, we can quickly create a brainstorming diagram and add single subtopics, multiple subtopics, etc. I'm going to teach you a thing or two about how we actually get to that point. But first, let me just bring out a few more. I'm going to make kind of a mess here, if you don't mind, because I want to start with the simplest way to do automation that requires no knowledge of VBA code, and that is by using the macro recorder. Let me save our work. I'm going to call this Nugget 19 automation. And let's say we have, as a matter of course, when we finish a drawing, our corporate standard calls for not landscape, but portrait orientation, and we want our drawing centered on the page. So I hope you're thinking that that's a few separate tasks there, or a few separate actions, especially if we're zoomed in tight as we're working on a drawing to do shape alignment and shape stacking. Wouldn't it be nice to change the page orientation and center our drawing on the page in one fell swoop? Well, that's going to be the example or case study that we'll do right now when we record our first macro. Now, to record a macro, as I said, we can come down here to the status bar. And by the way, if you right-click the status bar, you can customize what's being shown. If you know you're not going to need macros, you can turn off the macro recorder simply by deselecting it, and you can reduce clutter actually by deselecting objects you don't want, like language. If you're not using a localized version of Visio, you may not care to have the language show up. I'm going to turn the macro recorder back on and give it a click. This invokes the record macro dialog as we saw. We want to give the macro a descriptive name. You can't use dots because dots are reserved in programming languages like .NET and VBA. I would suggest you use camel case. So I'm going to call this orientation and center. Camel case is where we capitalize each significant word in the name. I'm going to store the macro in the document, which is the default. And as description, this is a good idea to document our code as much as possible. Set page orientation to portrait, center drawing. Click OK. And now we're actually recording. If we come down to the status bar and hover over it, this is going off the recorded area, and I'm sorry about that. But there's a tooltip that says a macro is currently recording. Click to stop recording. Now, one technique that you'll learn before too long when you're recording macros is you'll want to rehearse the steps before you do the recording. You want to be as efficient as possible with your steps. You also want to use the menu commands, or should I say the ribbon commands, wherever possible. Don't confuse things by using keyboard shortcuts. You may know all the speed keys, but Visio has to resolve those shortcuts into commands. It's much better, in my experience, to use commands from the ribbon directly. Now, I've used the ribbon customization feature of Visio to add the center drawing command to the Home Ribbon tab. You won't have this in your installation, so you'll need to do that as an extra step if you're trying to follow along. You do know how to change the page orientation. We're going to go to the Design tab and change our orientation to Portrait. I'm then going to come down to our Fit Page to Current window to make sure that our zoom level is set correctly, and then I'm going to come to my custom group that I told you I created, Center the Drawing. Once you've finished the steps in the macro, you can come down and click the stop button, and then you'll notice that the button goes back to the way it looked originally. Unfortunately, you don't see a message box that confirms that the macro was successful. I kind of wish Visio did it that way, but they don't. Now let's mess up the view again. Let's come in really tight. Let's change the page orientation back to landscape. And actually, let me move these guys off of center just to be really careful and make it obvious that the macro is doing its job. When we want to run the macro, we'll come over to the Developer ribbon and we'll click the Macros button, and you'll see we have a macro name which we can edit and change if we want to. You see that it has a whole bunch of what appears to be garbage in front of the friendly name that we gave it. new macros, automation. What does that mean? It's the file name clearly, and then we have something called new macros, and then we have the name that we gave it. What the heck does that mean? Well, I'm going to teach you that in just a moment, but for now I want you to see that to run a macro from here, we select it in the list, and then we come down to run. Now there's some other options here. If we click Edit, we're going to go into VBA and see the underlying code. Step Into is useful for troubleshooting or debugging a macro. It's going to gradually, procedure by procedure, step by step, work its way through your macro. Sometimes more complicated macros do require a good deal of debugging before they work perfectly. Then we have Delete, and then we have Options, which enables us really just to set the description and an optional shortcut key. Description also shows up down in the bottom, as you see. Let me click Run, and boom, you immediately see all of those changes having happened. Our page orientation shifted, our drawing is centered, and our zoom goes out to full page view. That is really it as far as macros, the basic functioning of a macro using the macro recorder. Now, I mentioned that you can edit and customize these macros that you use the GUI recorder for. You do that in the Visual Basic editor, so let's go back into that editor, and I want you to see something. You'll see in the upper left we have a pane called the project window, and you'll see the root node is the name of the file. Now in your Visio session, if you open up additional files, you're going to see additional root level entries in your project window. That's because you have just one instance of the VBA editor, no matter how many copies or no matter how many Visio documents, I should say, you have open simultaneously. Now within that document, you always have an object called this document, and that refers to any VBA code that's embedded directly in the VSD file. When you create a macro using the macro recorder, the macro will always spawn what's called a module, and it will call that module new macros, and it'll show up in your list here. When I double left click new macros, sure enough, this is the code behind the recorded macro we just did. Now new macros is the default name. It's just been an Office standard for years, and a module means that this is encapsulated code or code that's in a separate area that you can actually export and share if you need to. Note if we right-click the module, there's an option to export the file. So again, just to kind of put that in your conceptual pipe to smoke, that modules provide one good way to store your VBA code for sharing among multiple files. Now I also mentioned that using the macro recorder and then looking at the code that's generated is a nice way to begin to learn the Visual Basic for Applications language. And that's true. You'll see here we can choose any specific subroutines that are stored within that module or file by using this rightmost drop-down. We have just the orientation and center. And yes, I see I misspelled orientation. You can actually correct that here. Once you get right into the code, you have full control over how it behaves. So let me save my changes. Nice thing that the Visio macro recorder does is that it documents the code here. These little apostrophes denote comments. Comments are metadata elements that you can add to document your code that are ignored during the program compilation process. So it's a nice way to remind yourself or your colleagues what code does, while at the same time not having any effect on the end product, the actual executed code. So we're not going to step through here. I'm just going to show you the major points. Major points are remarkably simple. We could do the same thing in like 2 or 3 lines instead of all of these lines that we see here. This line here you should see just with this viz fit page. Well, this must be dealing with how we can change the view when we made full screen view, fit to page. Look here, application, active window, page center drawing. Well, I'll bet you dollars to donuts, that is what did the center drawing. It's a lot easier just to type a few words than to figure out which toolbar button or ribbon tab button does that, especially because, as I said earlier, center drawing is not in the ribbon in Visio 2010 by default. Now you'll notice the way these words are constructed. Application.activeWindow.page.center drawing. You notice we're going from the broadest level down to the more granular level. This is part of the Visio object model, that vocabulary that I told you before. So it's important, as I said, if you're going to begin to do VBA, you want to start to learn some of these code words. Now, as we're going to see now, the Visual Basic for Applications editor is pretty good as far as helping you learn this. It's got something called IntelliSense built into it. Matter of fact, why don't we create our own code now while we're in the editor. I'm going to double left click this document, and we can build out our own subroutine. A subroutine is also called a function. It's just going to be some code that does something the following way. We specify sub, and I'm going to call this hello world. If this function does not take any input parameters, we can just do open paren, close paren like I've done. Now when you press enter, you see that Microsoft has given us helpfully the end sub. Every subroutine declaration has to have an end sub to close it up. Now sometimes I get a little overly enthusiastic and I think I have to do it myself. So I'm going to leave that to show you what a bug looks like. And then the actual code, I'm going to indent just to denote where the code is. I'm going to pop up a message box that says, hello world. Now I'm going to stop right here. You'll notice that the autocomplete, or IntelliSense as it's called, will start to show up here and give you syntax help as soon as the VBA editor sees what you're trying to do. Now MessageBox actually has a couple ways you can do it. You can use parentheses or not. In this simple example, I'm not going to use parentheses, but note it says message box and then the prompt, which is what I'm adding right now in quotes. A string is an alphanumeric, well, string, and we denote strings using double quotes in VBA. And there's some extra parameters in this tooltip, as you see here, where we can customize how the message box looks. We'll do that in just a moment. For now, I'm going to do hello world and leave it at that. We'll save our work. Now there's a couple ways we can run this code. We can actually do it right from within the VBA editor. We can come over to this run sub user form, and as long as our mouse pointer is placed within the sub, the VBA editor will assume that we're trying to run that subroutine. Now this is an example of an error, so we're debugging an error. It says compile error, only comments may appear after end sub, end function, or end property. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? So it errored out right at the beginning of this subroutine, and it didn't like this second end sub. Well, we can be creative and comment out that line. I wonder if it'll work now. Let's stop to reset our debugging environment and then restart it. We'll select hello world and run, and it looks like that worked just fine. Great. Another thing, what's better, instead of commenting out the line, I'm going to remove it altogether. And again, looks like we're just ducky. Hello world, by the way, is the typical example. It's the first example given when you're learning any programming language. And as much as I'd love to go deep, we're not going to concentrate on the programming aspects. I just want to get you familiar with the workflow of VBA automation in Visio 2010. We're going to extend this message box example briefly. Don't worry about the specifics. I just want to demonstrate some of this code complete, this IntelliSense that helps us with the Visio object model. Now, if I want to create like an information or critical icon, I can pass in additional parameters here. So as soon as I hit comma, we see a drop down, and we can arrow through this list if we want to. And this is going to denote the kind of icon that shows up in our alert box. Critical is going to be an exclamation mark. I'm going to have this be VB information because I just want a standard information dialog. Once you're at the appropriate spot, hit tab. I'm going to add, by hitting plus, the fact I only want to show an OK button. As soon as you start to type, the list gets filtered based on what you're typing. So typing VB OK brings me down to VB OK cancel. I want VB OK only, so I'll select that and hit tab. And then finally, we can provide a title for the dialog. Again, this is a string, so I'm going to enclose that in double quotes. And this gives us a pretty well tricked out message box. Now I'm going to run this guy from Visio. So we'll come back into Visio, save our work, and you can get to your VBA code through the macros dialog. You see now that we have, in addition to the macro we recorded through the macro recorder, we see a second element stored in the document called this document.hello world. And this one, as we know, was created strictly with VBA. When we click run, we now see our finished message box that has our information balloon, it has our custom message bar text, it has only an OK button, no cancel, and of course the text itself. Great. Final points about VBA before we move on. As you exert blood, sweat, and tears adding code, as I said earlier, you're going to want to make your code more portable. Couple different ways to do that. We can store our code in a module. We can also store our code in a custom stencil file. That's a pretty cool way to do it. First, let me show you the module. Now, right now, this hello world routine is part of the document. I'm going to select it with the mouse and copy it to my clipboard. And now let's slip in a new module file. We can right-click click at the document level in the project window, choose Insert Module, and it gives us a module called Module 1. I'm going to paste in my Hello World example, and then we can save our work. Any modules you insert are going to not be separate in the file system. They're embedded in the file itself. If we want to make this module in the file system available for import elsewhere, we'll right-click the module and choose Export File. I'm going to save mine in the Viz Templates folder I've used before, and I'll call this Custom Module. Note that VBA module files take the extension BAS. It's a nod to Visual Basic. So what this means is we can close out of our VBA editor. I'm going to actually restart Visio, open up a brand new document. I'm going to, just for grins, do a basic flowchart, save it to disk as basic flowchart just for grins. And if I open up the Visual Basic editor, I don't see anything, do I? Besides this document object. I don't have a new macros module because I haven't recorded any macros in this file, and I don't have any external modules loaded either. Well, we can fix that by right-clicking our document, doing an import file, and then selecting our custom module, opening it up, and sure enough, there it is. So we can, just to complete this example, come into macros, run it, and our code is now available in this file. Isn't that great? Another way to go, and this is a great bookend to the nugget we did on creating custom templates, is that we can actually embed code in a stencil. This is an excellent way to do business. So let's imagine we were developing a custom template and we wanted to add in a brand new custom stencil. We know that from More Shapes, we can deploy a new stencil there, or actually on the Developer Ribbon tab, we can build a new stencil here as well. I'm going to call this VBA Code Library. And just for grins, I guess I'll add one shape to it, but you don't have to have any shapes on a stencil that you plan to use predominantly or exclusively to store your VBA code. Now, if I come back into the Visual Basic editor for this document, you should see that we actually have a second node in our project area devoted to the stencil. Isn't that cool? So let me again copy my Hello World procedure, double-click the stencil document object, and I'm going to call this Hello World Stencil just to differentiate it from the other Hello World function to make sure we're talking about the same thing. Save our changes. We'll do a file, close, and return to Visio. And again, I'm going to restart the Visio application. Okay, this time I'm going to create just a general basic diagram. And if we want that code to be available to us via our library stencil, all we have to do is go to More Shapes, Open Stencil, bring in our VBA code library. Now on our Developer tab, we can go to Visual Basic, and sure enough, we have Hello World Stencil available to us. Isn't that great? Okay, in the interest of time, we need to move on to the shape sheet now, so without any further ado, let's do that. On the Developer tab, as I mentioned before, in the Shape Design area, we have Show Shape Sheet. This is available only if we are in developer mode. I also mentioned that the shape sheet can be exposed selectively on a per shape basis for the page or the entire document. Another way to do this is by right-clicking the appropriate object. By right-clicking a shape, we have Show Shape Sheet. By right-clicking the page, we can show the shape sheet. And this is a gotcha. To see the document shape sheet, you don't right-click the pasteboard. You hold down Shift while you click the pasteboard. And this will give you the file or document level shape sheet. Now the shape sheet for the document is actually very small. There's just the document properties. When you work into a deeper level, like maybe a shape level, there's a lot more there. So the first thing I want to teach you is how to selectively show and hide sections in a shape sheet. When the shape sheet is shown up, boy, there's a lot of S's there, aren't there? You have a custom context-sensitive ribbon tab called Shape Sheet Tools. And you notice here in the view area we have sections. This allows us to selectively show or hide sections. There's so much to the shape sheet. I find myself that if I know which sections I need to customize, I can deselect anything I don't need. Here's a nice pro tip. You can click None and then come in and select the ones that you need. You'll see that some are grayed out that are always shown no matter what, but Visio does give you pretty good control over sections and their viewability. You'll see down below that when you click in a cell, you can either double left click to work within the cell, or you can come up here to this Excel-like formula bar. I would recommend you do that. I find double clicking down in the cell can get awfully hairy because you can actually inadvertently create cell-to-cell references by clicking in one cell and then clicking in another, and so on and so forth. It can get kind of hairy. Second pro tip I have for you is that when you are doing that, when you're working up here in the formula bar, you can give yourself a lot more room to move by clicking the Edit Formula button over here at the right. Unfortunately, you can't increase the font. It's still very terribly small, but at least we have so much more room to work with in this particular dialog. Alright, so far so good. Now, you'll note that the view can be toggled in between formulas and values. Now, this isn't a particularly good example looking at the document properties. Let me close out of that and again focus on the shape level that has a lot more going on. You can set static values for fields, but the power of the shape sheet really comes in when we're using formulas. So this speaks to your studying the Visio shape sheet reference, which you can get to online. That may be the most current way to go, but if you've installed the Visio software development kit, they give you in their documentation, offline documentation, a compiled HTML help file that includes an area on the shape sheet, the Visio shape sheet reference. So we have a full reference of cell options and the possible values that can be added to each. There's a lot here. I wish, frankly, that Microsoft did a better and more comprehensive job of documenting the shape sheet. What they have is pretty darn hardcore propeller head stuff. But anyway, let's get on with a brief practical example, shall we? Let me close the shape sheet because, you know, it does take up quite a bit of screen real estate, and let me minimize the ribbon to give ourselves yet more room to work. In this simple example, I'm going to assume that we're going to create a Visio network drawing where we want to be able to toggle the uptime status and show that status in a different color. We're going to have a circle shape that shows green when it denotes an up state for a piece of hardware and red for a down state. All right. Basically, we're going to do conditional formatting. You'll remember when we did data linked diagrams, you can do data graphics that have conditional formatting, but the shape sheet is required if we want to do conditional formatting on shapes themselves. So I'm going to bring out a representative shape. I'm going to bring out a circle, and I'm going to do some initial surgery on it, just basically to make it as malleable as possible for our purposes. I'm going to select the shape and remove any theming from the design theme area. I'm going to come over to Developer Protection and remove all protection constraints by clicking None. I'm going to come back home and we're going to adjust a default fill color. I'll choose a medium gray, and we also want to go to our fill options and make sure that we're dealing with a solid pattern, no transparency, and no shadowing. Again, going to be double clear on that by selecting no shadow from the shadow list. Let's save our changes, and given that as a baseline, let's now define some shape data for this object. You remember we can do that by right-clicking, going to Data, Define Shape Data. Now I'm going to create what's called a fixed list. This gives us the ability to toggle between multiple elements in a drop-down. It's a great way to ensure that you're passing valid data in a Visio SmartShape. I'm going to call this status, give the label and the object name the same name, and for type, I'm going to choose fixed list here. Now this is a little tricky. You might think that you put your different options in the value area, but you don't. You actually put them here in format. My two statuses are going to be up and down. I'm going to separate those with a semicolon and not use a space. The default value, I'll leave it up, and for prompt, this is our help text basically, is the system online and available? It's basically yes or no. That's going to be our single piece of shape data. Now you remember we can right click Data, Shape Data to bring out that shape data area, and because we created a fixed list, we can change the value using a really nice control, and we don't have the ability to put an invalid value in there. Note that if we hover over the area, we get our help text is the system online and available. Pretty cool stuff. Now, we're going to adjust the shape sheet properties for the shape itself. So we'll right click the shape and choose Show Shape Sheet. Boy, all these S's are kind of getting to me. Now I've already customized the view down here. Let me go to sections and show you what we've got going on. Basically, I just want to show the relevant sections. Our shape data section, which gives us our property elements that show up in the shape data window, and fill format, which is going to adjust things like the color of the object. So I came in here, hit none, and made sure that shape data and fill format are the only things I'm looking at. Now in shape data you see something called prop.status. Well, we know that that refers to the shape data property called, you guessed it, status. We have a prompt, we have a data type, we have a format. What I want to show you here is that the shape sheet directly controls what's happening on the Visio drawing. So if we wanted to, we could come in here and add a third option in between, let's say, save our changes. We'll add a third option in between, and I'll save my change. This is important by clicking the accept button here. We can now see that that change has been placed in our shape data window immediately. You see what I mean? Now by contrast, we already know this, but we can come to the GUI area and remove it from here, click OK, and boom, immediately the shape sheet reflects the change. So this is a graphical demonstration of the intimate relationship or nexus between the shape sheet and items on the actual Visio page. Okay, so thus far we have our shape data defined. How can we change the color of this such that if our status is up, it denotes green. If the status is down, it'll denote red. And we can use this, let's say, ultimately as an icon that we superimpose on a server shape in a network drawing. Well, what we'll want to do here is customize the fill foreground area. Now you notice it already has a formula in there, something called theme guard, MSO tint, blah, 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 blah. We're going to replace this formula altogether. I'm going to click in the formula bar and click edit formula. And I'm just going to ask you to take what I'm about to type on faith because unfortunately we don't have the bandwidth to fully explain it in this video. Consult the documentation, friends. Essentially what's happening here is that I'm using an if statement to do a string comparison, basically to check the status shape data property. And if the property is set to up, I'm setting the fill color to RGB 01280. That's the equivalent for green. Otherwise, we're going to color it red. It's going to be either or. When you click OK, if there's an error in your formula, Visio will stop you in your tracks. If you click OK and it works, you can rest assured that you're okay. And sure enough, it looks like our conditional formatting got picked up just fine. Let's close out of our shape sheet so we can see this a little bit better. We see our shape is showing up as green, and when the shape is selected and we change the status of its data, it looks like the color changes appropriately as well. So there's a nice example of using the shape sheet. Very final thing I want to show you is, I mentioned that when you choose a template that has code in it, again, this is coming back to what we did originally with VBA, and it has these actions here at the right click menu. I just want to close by taking you into the shape sheet here so I can show you where those live in the shape sheet. Specifically, you see we have a section called actions. So this is defining those first entries, which are, as we know, add subtopic, add multiple subtopics, etc. And sure enough, here it is. Add subtopic, add multiple subtopics. And these actions can do anything, really. They can run a simple formula, or in this case, what's happening with the brainstorming template is that we're invoking the built-in function run add-on with arguments, and then it's dipping into the brainstorm built-in add-on VBA code and running the command in there called subtopic, okay? So that's specifically what's happening. Now you can always bring out the action section for any shape sheet, and you can actually add your own stuff here. You can right click and insert a section, or in this case we want to insert a row, and that can be whatever you want it to be. I'm just going to call this Tim action. I'm just going to paste the action from the previous example, and I'm going to call this Tim W action, and we'll accept the change. We right click the shape. There's my custom action. Just wanted to close with that as a nice tease and incentive for you to get into the SDK and start learning how to use this, because it's going to make you a geometrically better Visio professional. Using VBA and the Shapesheet review. Boy, we covered a lot of ground in a compressed amount of time. As I said, we can definitely devote an entire entire Nugget series to Visio automation and Visio solution development. We started this Nugget with our fundamentals. What is VBA? What is the Shapesheet? And why are they relevant to you as a Visio power user? Well, I hope I've made that case for using VBA and Shapesheet to extend Visio to meet your business needs. We then spent some time in our demo learning how to use VBA to accomplish automation. We worked with both the editor, the raw VBA code, as well as the macro recorder. I also showed you how we can use these approaches together to improve our understanding of the Visio object model. And then finally, we tied in the Shapesheet, that spreadsheet-like interface that describes all metadata possible for a given Visio object. Very interesting stuff here. Love it. I hope that this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.